Freeport Station had a smell that never left your clothes. It was a mix of engine grease, alien spices, and the sweat of 100 different species all crammed together in a place that was never meant to hold this many souls. The station hung at the edge of neutral space, a meeting point for traders, smugglers, refugees, and anyone else who had nowhere better to go. It was not a home. It was a place people ended up when every other option had failed. Daniel Reese wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and checked the cargo manifest one more time. 47 crates of mining equipment, all accounted for. His shift was done. 16 hours of hauling freight across loading bays, and his body ached in places he had forgotten could hurt. He was 42 years old, and every one of those years felt heavier than the last. He walked through the main corridor, passing shops that sold everything from rare gems to questionable food. A Aurelian merchant called out to him, offering a discount on synthetic alcohol. Daniel shook his head and kept walking. He did not drink anymore. Too many memories lived at the bottom of those bottles. His left arm moved with mechanical precision as he adjusted the strap of his bag. The prosthetic was military grade, expensive, and a constant reminder of what he had lost. The arm worked better than his original one ever had. It was stronger, faster, and never got tired. But it was cold. It felt nothing. Sometimes Daniel forgot it was there until he caught someone staring at the metallic fingers. The Outer Rim conflict had taken his arm along with 6 members of his squad. He had been a Marine, part of an elite unit that fought on the front lines against the Draconeth Empire. The Dragons, as humans called them, had burned entire colonies. Daniel had seen the aftermath. Bodies turned to ash. Children who never had a chance to run. He had carried that weight for 8 years now, and it never got lighter. He turned off the main corridor and headed toward the underdock. Most residents avoided this area. It was where the station dumped its waste, both literal and social. The lighting was dim, the walls were rusted, and the air recyclers barely worked. Refugees gathered here because no one else would have them. Daniel lived here because it was cheap and because he did not want to be around people who might ask questions about his past. The artificial rain cycle had started again. Freeport Station simulated weather patterns to prevent the air from becoming completely stagnant. In the upper levels, it probably felt refreshing. Down here, it just made everything wet and cold. Water dripped from broken pipes and pooled in the uneven floor panels. Daniel pulled his jacket tighter and walked faster. His container home was only a few more minutes away. He was thinking about the ration pack in his bag, the only food he would have until his next paycheck in 3 days. He was calculating how to stretch it when he heard the sound. The IT was quiet first. A low rumble, almost like distant thunder. Then it shifted into something else. A whimper. And beneath that, barely audible, the weak cry of a child. Daniel stopped walking. He had learned to ignore most sounds in the underdock. People fought here. People cried here. Getting involved only brought trouble. But this sound was different. There was something desperate in it, something that pulled at a part of him he had tried very hard to bury. He followed the sound around a corner into a narrow alley that led to a dead end. The rain was heavier here, pouring through a gap in the ceiling plates. And there, huddled beneath a rusted ventilation grate that offered almost no protection, was something that made Daniel's heart stop. That IT was a Draconeth. His hand moved instinctively toward his hip, reaching for a sidearm that was no longer there. Years of training screamed at him to run, to find security, to do anything except stand here like a fool. The Draconeth were monsters. They had burned his friends alive. They had destroyed everything he loved, but this Draconeth was not what he expected. She was small for her kind, maybe 7 feet tall if she stood straight. But she was not standing. She was curled on the ground, her body wrapped protectively around something clutched against her chest. Her scales, which should have been bright and iridescent, were dull and cracked. Patches of gray showed through where scales had fallen away entirely. Her wings, folded tight against her back, were torn and ragged, useless for flight. She was starving. Daniel had seen enough death to recognize the signs. Her ribs showed through her hide. Her eyes, golden and slitted, were sunken and hollow. She looked like she had not eaten in weeks. And then he saw what she was protecting. A hatchling. a baby dragon no bigger than a house cat. It was pressed against its mother's chest, shivering violently despite the warmth of her body. The tiny creature made a weak chirping sound, the same cry Daniel had heard from the corridor. It was hungry. It was cold. It was dying. The mother saw Daniel, and her reaction was immediate. She shifted her body to shield the hatchling, placing herself between her child and the human. A low growl built in her throat, but it was weak, barely a threat. She did not have the strength to fight. She knew it. Daniel knew it. They stared at each other across the rain-soaked alley. Human and Draconeth, former enemies. Daniel saw the fear in her eyes. She expected him to attack. She expected him to call security. She expected to die in this alley, and her only concern was what would happen to her daughter. Daniel did not move. He did not speak. He just stood there, rain soaking through his jacket, staring at a creature he had been trained to hate. And all he could see was a mother trying to protect her child. The Draconeth opened her mouth and spoke. Her voice was rough, broken, her command of common galactic clearly limited. "Please," she said. The word came out as a rasp. "Please. Not for me. For little one. She not eat in 4 days. Please. Anything. Scraps. Waste. Anything." She lowered her head, and Daniel realized she was begging. A Draconeth, a species known for their pride and their fury, was begging a human for scraps to feed her dying child. Daniel's chest tightened. He thought about his squad mates. He thought about the burning colonies. He thought about every reason he had to walk away and let nature take its course. Then he looked at the hatchling. She had opened her tiny eyes and was staring at him with curious innocence. She did not know about the war. She did not know that her species and his had killed each other by the thousands. She was just a baby who was hungry and cold and scared. Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out his ration pack. It was everything he had. 3 days of food. His stomach would ache for the rest of the week. He did not care. He held the pack out toward the mother, his arm extended, his posture non-threatening. She stared at him like he had gone insane. Her golden eyes searched his face for the trick, the trap, the cruelty she had learned to expect from every other species. She found nothing but quiet compassion. Her clawed hand reached out slowly, trembling, and took the ration pack from his grip. She held it like it was precious beyond measure. And then, to Daniel's shock, her eyes filled with tears. He did not know Draconeth could cry. Neither did she. There are moments in life when everything a person believes gets tested, not by grand speeches or dramatic events, but by small, quiet choices made when no one is watching. Daniel Reese stood in that rain-soaked alley, watching a creature he had been trained to kill weep over a packet of food, and he felt something shift inside him. It was uncomfortable. It was confusing, and it was impossible to ignore. The Draconeth mother held the ration pack against her chest for a long moment, her tears mixing with the artificial rain that fell around them. Then she seemed to remember herself. She wiped her eyes with the back of a clawed hand and tore open the packet with desperate urgency. But she did not eat. Instead, she broke off small pieces and held them to the hatchling pressed against her body. The little one ate ravenously. Her tiny jaws worked at the food with frantic energy, chirping between bites. She was so hungry that she nearly choked twice, and her mother had to slow her down, murmuring something in a language Daniel did not understand. The tone was universal, though. It was the sound of comfort, the sound of love. Daniel stayed where he was, keeping distance between himself and the pair. His presence clearly made the mother nervous. Every few seconds, her golden eyes would dart toward him, checking his position, assessing the threat. She was ready to fight if she had to. She would lose, badly, but she would fight anyway. That was what mothers did. The hatchling finished eating and let out a small, satisfied sound. She nuzzled against her mother's chest and closed her eyes. Within moments, she was asleep. It was probably the first time in days she had fallen asleep without her stomach hurting. The mother looked at Daniel. The hostility had faded somewhat, replaced by wary confusion. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was still rough, her grasp of common galactic still broken. "You are human. We killed your people. Why give food?" Daniel did not answer immediately. He leaned against the alley wall and folded his arms across his chest. The prosthetic arm clicked softly against the organic one. He thought about her question. He had been asking himself the same thing since he pulled out that ration pack. "You didn't kill anyone," he finally said. "You're just trying to keep your kid alive." The Draconeth tilted her head, studying him. "I was soldier once. Before. Long time ago. Were you at Harkin Colony? Vesta Prime? New Brisbane?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I was Defender. Protect Homeworld. Never go to human space." "Then you didn't kill my people." It was a simple statement, but it carried weight. Daniel had spent years hating the Draconeth as a species. Every one of them was guilty in his mind. Every one of them deserved what they got when humanity pushed back and shattered their empire. But looking at this starving mother and her sick child, he could not maintain that hatred. It felt hollow, pointless. "What is your name?" Daniel asked. She hesitated, as if sharing her name was a risk she was not sure she could afford. Finally, she answered, "Sethera. My daughter is Litha. I'm Daniel." Sethera nodded, but said nothing. She did not seem to know what to do with this situation. A human who gave instead of took. It did not fit her understanding of the universe. "How long have you been on this station?" Daniel asked. 3 cycles of the moon. Maybe 4. Hard to track time here. "Where were you before?" The question opened a wound. Daniel saw it in the way her body tensed, the way her wings pulled tighter against her back. She did not want to talk about it, but she answered anyway, perhaps because he had shown her kindness and she felt she owed him something. "Many places. After the war, everything fall apart. Empire gone. Broods fight each other for what is left. My mate." She paused, and her voice cracked. "My mate was Scholar. He say war was wrong. He try to stop it. They kill him for speaking truth." Daniel stayed silent. He knew that kind of pain. "I take Litha and run. Go from station to station. Planet to planet. No one want us. Draconeth are monsters, they say. La criminals. Everywhere we go, they chase us away. Beat us. Rob us. Here, security say they will space us if we go to upper levels. So we stay here, in the dark, in the cold." She looked down at her sleeping daughter. She was born after the war. She never hurt anyone. She does not know what her people did. But they hate her anyway. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. He had spent 8 years nursing his hatred for the Draconeth. He had told himself they deserved everything that happened to them. But this? A baby hated for a war she had no part in? A mother punished for the sins of an empire she never supported? This was not justice. This was cruelty. "When did she last eat before tonight?" he asked. "For days. I find scraps sometimes. Waste from food vendors. But not enough. Never enough. I give everything to her. I eat nothing." That explained why Sethera looked so thin. She had been starving herself to keep her daughter alive. Daniel had seen that before too, in the refugee camps after the war. Parents who gave everything to their children and wasted away in the process. "She's sick," Daniel said. It was not a question. He could see it in the hatchling's labored breathing, the way she shivered even in her sleep. Sethera nodded. "Lung sickness. Common in hatchlings who do not eat enough. Need medicine. But Draconeth medicine is..." She struggled for the word. "Banned. Restricted. Cannot buy. Because of the war." "Yes." Daniel stood there in the rain, looking at this mother and child who had nowhere to go and no one to help them. Every logical part of his brain told him to walk away. Getting involved with a Draconeth would bring nothing but trouble. Station security would come after him. Other residents would shun him. He could lose his job, his home, everything. But logic had never been Daniel's strongest trait when it came to protecting the innocent. That was why he had become a Marine in the first place. That was why he had fought in a war that cost him his arm and his friends. He wanted to protect people who could not protect themselves. Sethera and Litha could not protect themselves. They were alone, hunted, and dying slowly in the dark. And Daniel was the only person in the universe who seemed to care. "I have a place," he said. The words came out before he could stop them. "It's not much, just a converted shipping container. But it's dry, and it's warm." Sethera stared at him. "What? You can stay there. Both of you. Until you're stronger. Until we figure out something else." "I do not understand." Her voice was thick with confusion, and something that might have been hope. Why would you do this? You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Daniel shrugged. His shoulders ached from the day's work, and his stomach was already starting to complain about the missing ration pack. I've seen enough death, he said simply. I'm done adding to it. You're a mother trying to save her kid. That's something I can understand. That's something I can help with. Sethera's eyes filled with tears again. She blinked them away and looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. Gratitude, maybe, or disbelief, or both. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Daniel nodded. He pushed off the wall and gestured for her to follow. Can you walk? Yes. I think so. She tried to stand and nearly collapsed. She was weaker than she appeared. Daniel moved without thinking, catching her arm and steadying her. His prosthetic hand closed around her forearm with careful precision. She flinched at the touch but did not pull away. Lean on me if you need to, he said. It's not far. They walked together through the underdock, a human veteran and a dragon mother, making their way through the rain toward a place that might, for a little while, be safe. Neither of them noticed the security drone watching from the shadows above. Trust is not built in a single moment. It grows slowly, like a plant pushing through cracked concrete, fighting for every inch of progress. Sethera had spent 2 years learning that the universe was a cruel place for her kind. Every species she encountered saw her as a monster first and a person never. So when Daniel opened the door to his shipping container home and stepped aside to let her enter, she hesitated. Her instinct screamed that this was a trap. Her experience told her that kindness always came with a price. But Litha was burning with fever in her arms, and Sethera had no other options left. She stepped inside. The container was small, barely 12 feet long and 8 feet wide. A narrow bed was pushed against one wall. A tiny cooking unit sat in the corner next to a storage locker. A single light panel provided dim illumination. The walls were bare metal, scratched and dented from years of use. It was not much, but it was warm, and it was dry. Sethera had not been warm in months. Daniel gestured toward the bed. You two take that. I'll sleep on the floor. No, we cannot take your bed. It is too much. You can barely stand. Your daughter is sick. Take the bed. It was not a suggestion. His voice was firm, but not harsh. Sethera recognized that tone. It was the voice of someone who had given orders before and expected them to be followed. She was too exhausted to argue. She lowered herself onto the bed, and the softness of it nearly made her cry again. After months of sleeping on metal grates and concrete floors, even this thin mattress felt like luxury. She arranged Litha carefully, tucking the little one against her chest where her body heat could keep the hatchling warm. Daniel busied himself with the cooking unit. He pulled out another ration pack from his storage locker. His last one, Sethera realized. He had given her his dinner, and now he was using his reserve supply to make something for them. You should not waste your food on us, she said. It's not wasted if it keeps you alive. She did not know how to respond to that. In her experience, everyone wanted something. Resources were precious. Survival was individual. The idea that a stranger would give away his own food simply because she needed it did not make sense. Daniel brought over a small bowl of heated broth. The ration pack had been military grade, designed to provide maximum nutrition in minimum volume. It was not designed for Draconeth physiology, but it would work. Nutrients were nutrients. Try to get some of this into her, he said, handing the bowl to Sethera. Liquids are easier on a sick stomach. Sethera took the bowl carefully. Her claws clicked against the metal rim. She woke Litha gently and coaxed her into drinking the warm broth. The hatchling was weak and groggy, but she drank. That was a good sign. Daniel sat on the floor across from the bed, his back against the wall. He did not stare at them. He did not ask questions. He just sat there, giving them space, letting them adjust to this strange, new situation. The silence stretched between them. Sethera found it uncomfortable at first, but then she realized it was not awkward. It was respectful. Daniel was not demanding anything from her. He was simply present. You were soldier, she said eventually. It was not a question. Daniel nodded. Marine. 12 years. Fought in the Outer Rim conflict. Against my people. Yes. Sethera tensed. She had known this, of course. Most adult humans had fought against the Draconeth in some capacity. The war had lasted nearly a decade. But hearing him confirm it brought a fresh wave of fear. Daniel seemed to sense her anxiety. He shifted slightly and held up his left arm. The prosthetic caught the light, its metallic surface gleaming. "Lost this at a place called Marker Point," he said. "Supply depot on a moon. Your people hit it with everything they had. My squad was defending the perimeter when the fire came." He paused. 6 of my friends died that day. I was the only survivor." Sethera did not know what to say. She had heard stories like this before, but always from the other side. Draconeth warriors bragging about their victories against the humans. Now, she was sitting in the home of a man who had lost everything to her species. "I am sorry," she said. The words felt inadequate. "You weren't there. You said you were a defender. Protected your homeworld. That's a soldier doing her duty. Nothing to apologize for. But my people, your people did terrible things. So did mine. That's what war is." Daniel's voice was tired, but not bitter. "I spent years hating every Draconeth who ever lived. I dreamed about killing them. I thought it would make me feel better about surviving when my squad didn't. Did it? No. It just made me feel empty." He looked at her, and his eyes were filled with a sadness that Sethera recognized. She had seen it in her own reflection often enough. War took things from both of us. Seems stupid to keep fighting when it's already over. Litha stirred in Sethera's arms and made a small chirping sound. Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked around the unfamiliar space with confusion. Then she saw Daniel and tilted her head. "Warm," she said. Her voice was tiny and weak, but clear enough to understand. "He is warm." Sethera blinked in surprise. Litha had not spoken in days. The fever had made her too weak to do more than cry. But now she was talking, her golden eyes fixed on the human across the room. "Humans run hotter than Draconeth," Daniel explained. "We're tropical creatures originally. Our bodies generate more heat." Litha considered this information seriously, as only a child could. Then she reached out one tiny clawed hand toward Daniel. "Warm One," she said decisively. "That is your name now." Daniel's expression shifted. Something cracked behind his eyes, a wall he had built around himself crumbling just a little. He looked at the tiny hatchling with an emotion Sethera could not quite identify. "Warm One," he repeated. "I guess I've been called worse." Litha chirped happily and snuggled back against her mother. Within moments, she was asleep again, but she seemed more peaceful now. The broth and the warmth were already helping. Sethera watched Daniel carefully. "She likes you. Kids are usually good judges of character. She has never liked anyone except me. She learned early that other species mean danger. Smart kid. Yes. Too smart for her age. She has seen too much." The conversation lapsed into silence again, but this time it felt different, more comfortable. Something had shifted between them. They were not friends, not yet, but they were not enemies either. They were two survivors, both carrying wounds that would never fully heal, finding unexpected common ground. "Tell me about your mate," Daniel said quietly. "If you want to." Sethera closed her eyes. The memory of Varek was a wound that never stopped bleeding. But somehow, talking about him to this strange human felt right. Like finally being able to speak the truth after years of silence. His name was Varek. He was a scholar, studied the history of our people. He believed we had lost our way, that the war was destroying us from within. She stroked Litha's sleeping head. He spoke against the emperor, said we should seek peace instead of conquest. They called him a traitor. What happened? They executed him. Made an example. I was pregnant with Litha at the time. They would have killed us too, but I ran. I have been running ever since. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "He sounds like a brave man." He was. Too brave. He believed that truth could change the world. It only got him killed. Sometimes the people who tell the truth are the first to die. That doesn't mean they were wrong. Sethera opened her eyes and looked at Daniel. He was staring at the floor, lost in his own memories. "You have lost people too," she said. "I can see it. Everyone I cared about," he admitted. "My squad. My family back on Earth. I haven't spoken to them in years. Couldn't face them. Couldn't explain why I was the one who lived when everyone else died. Survivor's guilt. Yeah, that's what the therapists call it. We have the same thing in my culture. We call it the debt of the living. The belief that we owe something to those who died, that we must earn our survival. Daniel looked up at her. Have you earned yours? Sethera looked down at Litha, sleeping peacefully against her chest. I do not know, but I'm trying. For her. Daniel nodded slowly. That's all any of us can do, I think. Keep trying. For the people who need us. They sat together in comfortable silence as the station's artificial night cycle dimmed the lights outside. Two survivors, two former enemies, finding something neither of them expected: hope. 5 days passed in Daniel's small container home, and something remarkable happened. Life began to return to Sethra's eyes. Color started coming back to Litha's scales. The pair were still far from healthy, but they were no longer dying. That was progress. That was hope taking root in barren soil. Daniel had adjusted his routine completely. He worked double shifts at the cargo docks, taking every job he could find to afford food suitable for Draconeth physiology. The station had a few vendors who sold alien-specific nutrition, but they were expensive and located in areas where Sethera could never go safely. So Daniel made the trips himself, returning each night with packets of protein supplements and mineral compounds that would help her body recover. He never complained. He never mentioned the extra hours or the aching in his muscles. He simply did what needed to be done, quietly and consistently, like a man who had spent his life taking care of others and did not know how to stop. Litha was growing stronger every day. The little hatchling had taken to following Daniel around the tiny container, her golden eyes tracking his every movement. She had officially adopted Warm One as his name, and nothing could convince her otherwise. She would climb onto his lap when he sat down, pressing her small body against his chest to absorb his warmth. At first, Daniel had been uncomfortable with this. He was not used to physical affection, but Litha did not care about his discomfort. She simply claimed him as her own, and that was that point. One evening, Daniel returned from work to find Litha trying to catch his prosthetic fingers. Sethera watched from the bed, a small smile on her face. It was the first time Daniel had seen her smile. She thinks your hand is a toy, Sethera explained. She's not wrong. It could do some interesting things. Daniel wiggled his metallic fingers, and Litha chirped with delight. She pounced on his hand and tried to bite it, her tiny teeth clicking harmlessly against the metal. Does it hurt? Litha asked. Where your arm was. Daniel glanced at Sethera, then back at the hatchling. Not anymore. It hurt for a long time. But bodies heal. Mama says scars mean you survived something bad. Your mama is right. Litha considered this seriously. Then she pressed her tiny cheek against his prosthetic palm. I'm glad you survived, Warm One. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. It was not a bad feeling. It was the sensation of ice melting after a long winter. He had built walls around his heart, told himself he did not need anyone, that caring about people only led to pain. But this little hatchling did not care about his walls. She walked right through them like they were not even there. Me too, little one, he said quietly. Me too. The next morning, everything changed. Daniel was preparing to leave for work when he noticed Sethera watching him with worry in her eyes. She had been like this for the past day, tense and alert, constantly checking the small window that looked out onto the underdock corridor. What's wrong? He asked. I have seen drones. Security drones. They pass by more often than before. They are looking for something. Daniel's stomach tightened. For you. I think so. Someone may have reported seeing a Draconeth in this area. The station authorities will be searching. He had known this was a risk. Harboring an illegal refugee was a serious crime on Freeport Station. He could lose his job. He could lose his home. He could be arrested. But he had made his choice 5 days ago, and he was not going to change it now. We'll be careful, he said. Stay inside. Keep away from the window. I'll see what I can find out. He left for work with a heavy feeling in his chest. The cargo docks were busy as usual, but Daniel kept his ears open. He listened to the conversations around him, the gossip that flowed between workers like water. It did not take long to hear what he feared. Station security's offering a bounty, one of his co-workers said during a break. 5,000 credits for information on a Draconeth refugee. Can you believe it? Those monsters have some nerve showing their faces around here after what they did. Daniel kept his expression neutral. 5,000 is a lot. Yeah, apparently someone spotted her in the underdock a few days ago. Security's been searching ever since. I hope they find her. I lost my brother to those fire-breathing devils. Daniel said nothing. He finished his shift and returned home, his mind racing with worry. Sethera knew something was wrong the moment he walked through the door. What did you learn? There's a bounty. 5,000 credits. Someone saw you in the underdock. She closed her eyes and pulled Litha closer. Then we must leave. I have put you in enough danger already. Leave and go where? You can barely walk 100 meters. Litha is still sick. You wouldn't make it to the next sector. We cannot stay here. They will find us, and they will find you. You will be punished for helping us. Let me worry about that. No. Sethera's voice was firm. I will not let you destroy your life for us. You have shown us more kindness than we have received in 2 years. I will not repay that kindness by dragging you down with us. Daniel knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes directly. Listen to me. I've spent 8 years running from my past, hiding from everyone who cared about me, telling myself I didn't deserve to have a life because my friends died and I didn't. I'm tired of running, Sethera. I'm tired of being alone, and I'm not going to let you and Litha die just because the easy thing would be to walk away. Sethera stared at him. Why? Why do you care so much? Because someone should. Because if I don't help you, what was the point of surviving? What was the point of any of it? Before she could respond, there was a knock on the door. Daniel felt his blood turn cold. He held up a hand, signaling Sethera to stay quiet. Then he moved to the door and opened it just a crack. Standing outside was his neighbor, Hastags. The Rillian trader was old and weathered, his blue-gray skin covered in age spots. His large eyes were narrowed with suspicion. Reese, Hastags said, we need to talk. Daniel stepped outside and closed the door behind him. About what? Do not play dumb with me. I know what you have in there. I saw the claws through the window yesterday. You're hiding a Draconeth. Daniel's heart pounded, but he kept his face calm. What's it to you? Hastags' expression twisted with old pain. I lost my wife to the dragons. She was on a transport ship that they attacked. There were no survivors. His voice cracked. For 20 years, I have hated them. Every single one of them. Then what are you going to do? Turn me in? The old Rillian was silent for a long moment. His hands trembled at his sides. Daniel prepared himself for the worst. Then Hastags sighed heavily. I watched you, Reese. These past 5 days, you work yourself to exhaustion. You spend every credit on food that is not for you. You do not rest. You do not complain. He shook his head. My wife used to help refugees. Did you know that? Before the war. She believed everyone deserved a chance. Hastags, I am not going to turn you in. The words came out rough, like they hurt to say. But I wanted you to know that I know. And I wanted to tell you to be careful. Security is searching this block tomorrow morning. Every residence. Daniel felt relief and fear in equal measure. Tomorrow morning. You're sure? I'm sure. One of my contacts in security told me. They're getting desperate for that bounty. Hastags turned to leave, then stopped. Reese, the little one, the hatchling. Is she? She's just a baby, born after the war. She never hurt anyone. Hastags closed his eyes. My wife would have wanted me to help. She would have been disappointed in the man I have become. He walked away without another word. Daniel went back inside, his mind already racing. They had until tomorrow morning. Less than 12 hours. He needed a plan, and he needed it now that he pulled out his communicator and dialed a number he had not used in years. The line connected after 3 rings. Daniel, a woman's voice, surprised and wary. Is that you? Amara. I need help, and I need it fast. Amara-chan was the last person Daniel expected to help him. They had served together in the Marines, survived the same battles, watched the same friends die. But after the war, they had gone different directions. Daniel had retreated into isolation, hiding from the world. Amara had built something new. She ran a refugee aid organization called Open Hands, one of the few groups in neutral space that helped displaced people regardless of species. But even she had limits. You're asking me to help a Draconeth. Amara's voice crackled through the communicator. Daniel, do you have any idea what that would do to my organization? Our funding comes from human colonies. Colonies that were attacked by the Draconeth. If word gets out that we're helping dragons, we'll lose everything. I know what I'm asking. I wouldn't call if there was any other option. There are always other options. Not for her. Not for her daughter. Daniel glanced at Sethera, who was holding Litha close and listening to every word. She's a mother, Amara. Her kid is sick. They've been running for 2 years, and they have nowhere left to go. Tomorrow morning, security is going to find them and probably space them both. I can't let that happen. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Daniel could hear Amara breathing, could almost hear her thinking through every angle, every risk. You really care about them, she said finally. It was not a question. Yes. The Daniel I knew would have walked away, would have told himself it wasn't his problem. Maybe I'm tired of being that person. Another pause. When Amara spoke again, her voice was softer. There's a neutral colony called Haven's Gate. Small place on the outer rim. They accept refugees from all species, no questions asked. I have a transport leaving in 12 hours that's making a supply run there. I can get them on it. Daniel felt a wave of relief crash through him. Thank you, Amara. I owe you. You owe me more than you'll ever be able to pay. But we can discuss that later. The transport will dock at Bay 47. Be there at 0600. And Daniel, yeah, be careful. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. She ended the call. Daniel turned to Sethera and explained the plan. 12 hours. They just had to survive 12 hours. The next few hours passed with agonizing slowness. Daniel moved Sethera and Litha into a large cargo crate that he rigged with an air supply. It was the only hiding spot he could think of that might fool a security search. The crate was cramped and uncomfortable, but it would keep them hidden. I am scared, Litha whispered as Sethera settled her into the crate. I know, little one, but Warm One is going to take care of us. He promised. Daniel knelt beside the crate and looked at the hatchling. Hey, I need you to be brave, okay? Can you do that for me? Litha nodded, her golden eyes wide but trusting. Good girl. I'll be right here the whole time. Nothing is going to happen to you. He sealed the crate and positioned it in the corner of the container, covered with a tarp and surrounded by other boxes to make it look like part of his normal storage. Then he sat down to wait. Security arrived 3 hours later. Daniel heard them working their way down the corridor, knocking on doors, demanding entry. He forced his breathing to stay calm. He had faced worse than this. He could handle a few station cops. The knock came. Sharp, official, demanding. Daniel opened the door with a bored expression. Can I help you? 2 security officers stood outside. One was a thick-bodied Rillian, the other a tall human with cold eyes. Both wore armor and carried stun weapons. Daniel Reese? The human asked. That's me. We're conducting a security sweep. There have been reports of an illegal Draconeth refugee in this sector. Mind if we take a look? Go ahead. They entered the container and began searching. Daniel stood by the door, his heart pounding, but his face calm. The officers checked under the bed, opened his storage locker, looked in every corner. The human officer paused near the cargo crate. What's in here? Mining equipment. I do extra work on the side, fixing machinery. That's spare parts. The officer stared at the crate for a long moment. Daniel's prosthetic hand tightened into a fist behind his back. Then the officer moved on. They searched for another 5 minutes, finding nothing. The Rillian officer noticed some scratches on the floor and gave Daniel a suspicious look. These marks look fresh. Moved some crates around yesterday. Reorganizing. The officer grunted, but did not push further. Finally, they seemed satisfied. If you see anything suspicious, report it immediately, the human officer said. There's a bounty for information. I'll keep that in mind. They left. Daniel closed the door and leaned against it, his whole body shaking with relief. He waited until he heard their footsteps fade down the corridor, then waited another 10 minutes to be safe. Finally, he opened the crate. Sethera and Litha blinked in the sudden light. Litha was trembling, but she had stayed silent the entire time. Daniel had never been more proud of anyone in his life. They're gone, he said. You did great. Both of you. But as he helped them out of the crate, he noticed something was wrong. Litha was hotter than before. Her breathing was rapid and shallow. The fever that had been fading was back, worse than ever. "The medicine is not working anymore," Sethera said, her voice thick with fear. "She needs something stronger. Draconeth pediatric medicine." Without it, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Daniel checked his communicator. 8 hours until the transport left. Litha did not have 8 hours. "Where can I get that medicine?" "The Black Market District. There are dealers there who sell restricted substances. But it is dangerous. Criminals control that area. They will take everything you have. Then I'll give them everything I have." "Daniel, no. You have already done too much." He looked at her, and his expression was hard with determination. "I didn't bring you this far to watch your daughter die. Tell me what medicine she needs and where to find it." "I'm going." Sethera wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes. But she looked at Litha, burning with fever, struggling to breathe, and she knew there was no other choice. "There is a dealer named Grix. He operates in Sector 7 of the Market District. He is known for selling Draconeth medical supplies to collectors and black market buyers. He will have what Litha needs. But he is dangerous, Daniel. He will not simply give it to you. I have something to trade." Daniel held up his prosthetic arm. "Military grade. Worth more than most people make in a year." "Your arm?" "Daniel, you cannot. It's just metal and wires. It can be replaced." He took her hand with his organic one. "She can't." Before Sethera could protest further, Daniel handed her his communicator. "If something goes wrong, call Amara. Tell her what happened. She'll make sure you get on that transport. You're coming back." It was not a question. It was a command. "I'm coming back. I promise." He left the container and disappeared into the station's dark corridors, heading for a place where even security feared to go. Behind him, Sethera held her fevered daughter and prayed to God she had stopped believing in long ago. 8 hours until freedom. Daniel had to make every minute count. The Black Market District of Freeport Station was a maze of shadows and danger. Here, the station's artificial lighting barely functioned. Broken panels flickered overhead, casting everything in shifting patterns of light and dark. The air smelled of chemicals and desperation. Species that would never interact in the upper levels moved through these alleys like predators, each one looking for an opportunity to exploit. Daniel moved carefully, keeping his back to walls and his eyes constantly scanning. He had no weapon. He had no backup. All he had was his prosthetic arm and his determination. It would have to be enough. Finding Grix was not difficult. The dealer's reputation was well known, and a few careful questions pointed Daniel toward a converted storage bay near the heart of the district. 2 guards stood outside, both members of species Daniel did not recognize. They were large and heavily armed, which told him everything he needed to know about Grix's level of operation. "I'm here to see Grix," Daniel said. "I want to make a trade." The guards exchanged looks. One of them laughed. "Humans do not usually come here looking for deals. They come here to die." "Then I'm not a usual human. Tell Grix I have military-grade cybernetics. Pre-war, Earth production. He'll want to see me." Another exchange of looks. Then one of the guards disappeared inside. He returned a minute later and jerked his head toward the door. "He'll see you, but if you're wasting his time, you won't leave this place alive." Daniel stepped inside. The storage bay had been converted into a showroom of sorts. Shelves lined the walls, filled with medical supplies, weapons, cybernetic components, and things Daniel did not want to identify. At the center sat Grix himself, a creature that resembled a cross between a spider and a snake. Multiple eyes studied Daniel with cold calculation as he approached. "A human with military cybernetics," Grix said. His voice was smooth and oily. "Interesting. What do you want?" "Draconeth pediatric medicine. Respiratory compound. Enough for a severe case." The multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "That is a very specific request. Very few people need such medicine. Very few people would risk coming here to get it. Can you provide it or not?" Grix made a sound that might have been laughter. "Of course I can. The question is, can you pay? Such medicine is rare. Expensive. Most beings who come here looking for it cannot afford what I charge." Daniel held up his prosthetic arm. "Military grade. Earth Marine issue. Full neural integration. Worth 60,000 credits on the open market. Grix leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with greed. An impressive offer. May I examine it? Daniel walked closer and extended his arm. The dealer's limbs moved with surprising delicacy as he inspected the prosthetic, running sensors over the surface, testing the joints, analyzing the neural interface ports. Genuine, Grix confirmed, and in excellent condition. This would indeed cover the cost of the medicine. His eyes narrowed. But I find myself curious. Why would a human trade such a valuable piece of himself for Draconeth medicine? There are very few Draconeth left in this sector. Most were killed or fled after the war. My reasons are my own. Of course they are. Grix's tone suggested he had already guessed the truth. Very well. I accept your offer. But removing the arm will require my technicians. It will take an hour. I don't have an hour. Then we have a problem. Daniel clenched his jaw. Every minute he wasted was a minute Litha might not have. He looked at the prosthetic arm, then back at Grix. Manual release, he said. The arm has an emergency detachment function. I can remove it myself. Grix's eyes widened with surprise. That would be extremely painful. The neural connections, I felt worse. Before Grix could respond, Daniel reached to his shoulder with his organic hand and pressed a sequence of points along the prosthetic's base. There was a click, a hiss, and then fire. Pure, blinding fire racing through his nerves as the neural connection severed. Daniel gritted his teeth so hard he felt enamel crack. His vision went white. His body wanted to collapse, he stayed standing. With a final twist, the arm came free. Daniel held it out to Grix, his hand trembling, his face pale with pain. The medicine, he said through clenched teeth. Now. Grix stared at him for a long moment. Then something that might have been respect flickered across his alien features. He took the arm and handed over a small case containing several vials of Draconeth pediatric medicine. You are either very brave or very foolish, Grix said. I am not certain which. Neither am I. Daniel turned and walked out of the storage bay, one arm shorter than when he entered. The pain was still blazing through his body, but he forced himself to keep moving. He had what he needed. Now, he just had to get back. He made it 2 blocks before they found him. 3 figures stepped out of the shadows, blocking his path. They were the same species as Grix's guards, and their weapons were already drawn. The dealer's merchandise belongs to him, one of them said. That includes any medicine that leaves this district. We'll be taking that back. Daniel looked at them. He was exhausted. He was in agony. He was missing an arm. He had no weapon and no way to fight. No, he said. The criminals advanced. Daniel prepared to die. Then a familiar voice cut through the darkness. I really would not recommend that. Posik stepped out of a side alley, flanked by 2 other dock workers that Daniel recognized. All 3 were armed. Posik held an old plasma pistol that looked like it had seen the war. The criminals hesitated. This is not your business, old one, their leader said. You are threatening my neighbor. That makes it my business. Posik's voice was steady. Leave now, and we will pretend this never happened. Stay, and we will find out how good your armor really is. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the criminals exchanged looks and backed away, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as they had appeared. Daniel stared at Posik. You followed me. I told you my wife helped refugees. I'm trying to be the man she would have wanted me to be. The old Rillian looked at Daniel's missing arm and winced. That looks painful. It is, but I got what I needed. Then we should get you back. The little one needs that medicine. They moved through the station as fast as Daniel's weakened body could manage. Posik and the other dock workers formed a protective circle around him, guiding him through back passages and maintenance corridors. By the time they reached Daniel's container, he was barely conscious. Sethera opened the door and gasped when she saw him. Daniel, your arm, later. Give this to Litha. He handed her the case of medicine and collapsed against the wall. Sethera wasted no time. She prepared the medicine with practiced efficiency and administered it to her daughter. Litha was burning with fever, her breathing shallow and ragged. For several agonizing minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, Litha's breathing began to ease. The fever started to break. Her tiny body relaxed, and she fell into a peaceful sleep. Cythera looked at Daniel with tears streaming down her face. "You saved her. You gave up your arm to save her. Couldn't let her die," Daniel mumbled. He was having trouble staying awake. "She called me Warm One. Nobody's called me anything good in a long time." Cythera moved to his side and took his remaining hand. "Rest now. I will take care of you until the transport comes." Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time in 8 years, he did not dream of fire and death. He dreamed of nothing at all, and it was the most peaceful sleep he had ever known. When he woke, it was nearly time to go. Cythera had bandaged his shoulder and given him something for the pain. Litha was awake and alert, her fever completely gone. When she saw Daniel, she chirped happily and climbed into his lap. "Warm One is hurt," she said, touching his empty shoulder with gentle claws. "I'm okay, little one. I'm okay." The transport was waiting at Bay 47, just as Amara had promised. It was a small ship, worn but serviceable. Amara herself was there to meet them. "Daniel." She looked at his missing arm and shook her head. "You always did take things too far. Had to be done." She sighed. "There's room on the transport for you too. Haven's Gate is a good place. Quiet. Safe. You could have a real life there." Daniel looked at Cythera. She was watching him with hope and fear in her eyes. She did not say anything. She did not have to. "Litha calls you Warm One," Cythera finally said. "She asked for you when you're not there. We have no one else. And I." She hesitated. "I did not want you to leave." Daniel thought about his empty container, his lonely life, his years of hiding from everyone who cared about him. He had been surviving, not living, just existing from one day to the next without purpose or connection. These two had given him something he thought he had lost forever. A reason to keep going. A family. "I'm coming with you," he said. Cythera's face broke into the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. They boarded the transport together. Daniel sat in a seat by the viewport. Litha curled in his lap, Cythera beside him with her head resting on his shoulder. As the ship pulled away from Freeport Station, Daniel watched the massive structure shrink into the distance. He was leaving behind everything he had known. His job, his home, his solitary life, that he was gaining something far more valuable. "Where are we going?" Litha asked sleepily. "Somewhere safe," Daniel said. "Somewhere we can be a family." "We are already a family, Warm One." Daniel looked at Cythera, who smiled at him through tears. He looked at Litha, small and warm against his chest. He thought about everything he had lost and everything he had found. "Yeah," he said softly. "I guess we are." The ship entered hyperspace, carrying a human veteran, a dragon mother, and a tiny hatchling toward a new beginning. Behind them lay a universe of hatred and fear. Ahead lay the possibility of something better. All because one man could not look away.